I often find myself sitting in the middle of the night, sobering up. However, as part of the sobering up process, I would think, no, ponder the big major questions that we as humanity face today. Questions with no clear answers. Like, why does France exist? Is Poland actually real? And the biggest one of them all, Belgium. Why? Why Belgium? These questions all fill me with immense existential dread. In short, they make me unhappy, or as one could say, they leave me on low morale. And I want no one to ever go through low morale out there. Hence today, we're stacking morale, and this way no one will ever be sad again. Before we get into disclaimers, this video is actually a collaboration with the one and only The Student, an incredible EU4 player and a man of many great runs and sometimes even exploits. He's certainly worth a watch. Furthermore, while I'm out here stacking theoretical morale, I made a more humanly achievable version by Technology Group 15 that I've sent off to the student himself. Not only will he be getting all the morale stacking that I've mentioned, he'll also be gaslighting European monarchs into believing they've always been Protestant, and using that power to take texts like 3 texts ahead of time. Leading us to an interesting situation by Tech 15, where the student will be able to perform the ultimate demonstration of morale advantage. This of course also saves me having to demonstrate the modifier in the video itself. A link to his video can be found first thing in my description, so be sure to check it out. Right then, it's disclaimers time. Stacking morale, not morale damage, and only percentage modifiers. Pretty simple stuff, I hope. I will not be restricting myself to only permanent modifiers. I'm here to achieve maximum happiness. But if you want to make my life harder and give me work to do in the future, make sure to tell me that in the comments, and if enough people shout at me, I will have to do it. Anyway, with all that out of the way, as always, ironman compatible, achievement compatible, standard setup. Let's go. Our journey today begins in the country of Tondo, and while I have selected the country, now would be a great time to say that morale stacking has actually been conceptually routed not by me, but by an individual named as Oko. Now, Oko didn't do most of this routing. As a matter of fact, he did way less than half. He also did it like 2 years ago before a lot of other new things were introduced. However, he laid the foundations of some of the initial steps of this route and certainly inspired a lot of the routing involved here. So a big shout out to Oko, who can be found in the GC general chat, coping and seating with the other players, for, well, doing a lot of the initial work for this video. With those acknowledgements out of the way, let's actually get into Tondo itself. So why are we in Tondo? Well, it's for the Tondo missions. They contain a very interesting combination of both permanent end of the game plus 2 goods produced and 25% production efficiency, thankfully locally until the end of the game, as well as some other local goods produced, for example, with some rather interesting modifiers. See, we can conquer Luzon for 5% morale of armies, so that's a good plus 5% for us to start with. But we can also conquer Visayas for another 5% morale of armies. And then we can conquer Mindanao for, guess what, another 5% morale of armies. And then if we invade Burma, we get another 10% morale of armies, leading to a pretty insane 25% morale of armies from missions. Now, this is greater than the buff that Prussia gets from their ideas. This does mean that, given the morale of the Prussian military, or a bunch of Tondoish chaps pretty chuffed with themselves for conquering the local area, the Tondoish chaps actually win out by 5%. Thankfully, we'll be forming Prussia later, so no one's going to be left out. Then go ahead and form Delhi, and take the Conquer Bengal mission for 15% morale. Again, so far these are all temps, so you're going to have to do them all right at the end basically. After that, form Rajasthan, which will actually give you the Indian tech group, not something we desire here, but it's a side effect we'll have to suffer through. I've tagged into Mawar here because they also have the Rajasthani missions. We're here for the Unite Rajputana mission for another 10% morale of armies. Then form Tibet. I'm in San again because they have access to Tibet missions, but the mission we're looking for here is to restore the Pala Kingdom for another 15% morale of armies. Then we're off to Europe, and we will need to go ahead and form Morocco. Morocco has 2 sources of morale for us. When we reclaim Andalusia, we'll get 10% morale of armies from that. The invasion of Canaan will also provide another 10% morale of armies for our modified stacking. Now, I would love to go ahead and form Tunis here. However, Morocco cannot form Tunis, and Tunis cannot form Morocco. But there is nothing in the game code stopping Morocco forming something else and then forming Tunis, which is what we're going to be doing here. because now we're going to go ahead and Switzerland, so that we can end the Habsburgs for another 5% morale of armies, this one thankfully until the end of the game. After which we'll be able to go ahead and form Tunis. We're looking for one mission here, the conquest of Cannon Bornu, for another 15% morale of armies. And now we finally make our way over to Germany proper. We need to avoid getting a bad German regional tag, so while forming something like Bavaria may be tempting, we need to find the best one for morale, and the best one for morale is actually Pomerania, which I've formed here. The reason is for 2 missions. We'll be able to get both Revenge of the Knights for 10% morale of armies, and furthermore, if Poland is a subject of someone else, we'll get another 10% morale from strengthening old ties in the mission as seen here, giving us a further 20% from the Pomeranian missions. This is also a great time to pick up Faith Bastion for 5% morale of armies as well. Then it's time for us to go ahead and form Sardinia-Piedmont to access to the Sardinia-Piedmont or Savoy mission. There is a 5% admin efficiency here for those interested, however, we're actually here for a different reason. We need to pick up Military Self-Reliance for 10% morale of armies for 30 years, as well as the Kingdom of Cyprus for another 10% morale armies. With that done, go ahead and form the Hanseatic League to get access to the Hanseatic League mission tree. We need to appoint a war minister here. The one we'll be going for is of course the 15% morale of armies one, and thankfully this is also to the end of the game. Then we need to go ahead and form Prussia. Make sure you take Prussian ideas for the 20% morale of armies. Quick intermission, also form the Congo for 10% morale of armies here. Then, before we get to our final stag, a rather unusual pit stop, go ahead and form England, and then just fire your civil war. In the civil war, whatever side you pick, you'll have the option for the new model army for another 10% morale of armies, this one only for 10 years. However, after all that, we will actually conclude our story in Russia. Remarkably enough, yet again, they just have an obscene amount of morale inside of their missions. You gain 5% morale of armies from destroying the hordes, 10% from this mission here, 10% from conquering Finland, so that is 25% already from Russia alone, another 10% permanently from just going through the Time of Troubles disaster, and then before you go revolutionary, hint going revolutionary, make sure you go to the Fate of the Peasantry and, well, give them a tiny bit more freedom, which will give you an extra 5% morale as well on top of everything else. You will keep this even when you get rid of the whole peasants as a concept when you go revolutionary. And you can also finally get rid of that horrible Indian technology group by going Great Imperial Ambition. Changing your technology group to Western and the Western Approach mission also gives you 5% discipline until the end of the game, because of course it does. Now let's talk ideas, and there's actually many valid solutions here. One that I'm going to go with is going to be defensive to gain a 15% morale of armies from military drill, religious to enable a whole bunch of policies, then flip theocracy to pick up divine, take a placeholder, in this case exploration, quantity, take another placeholder, here I've taken diplomatic, and finally get yourself plutocratic ideas. In the policies we're looking for wielders of the flaming sword for 10% morale of armies, field priests and soldiers prayer books for 10% morale of armies, and that's actually it for policies. Then grab the 10% morale of armies advisor, go revolutionary and grab these 3 government reforms, change your religion to reformed to gain access to the war focus for 10% morale of armies, and become a defender of faith for a high enough level to gain 5% morale of armies from that, pop your golden age for 10% morale of armies here, get 100 army tradition for 25% morale of armies, 100% power projection and 100 prestige for 10% morale of armies each as well. Finally, we hinted at events already when we formed England, but there's actually not that many. With the Army Reform Advisor, get him to level 3 to get 20% from the Army Reform from the Grand Captain, then the actual Army Reform event for another 20% morale of armies, and if you really want to try hard, drop plutocratic, pick up aristocratic, pop the morale event from that, and then get plutocratic back. But there you go, in my understanding that is the limit of how much morale percentages you can squeeze out of any country. At Miltech 30, the base morale becomes 6, so assuming you're fighting someone with literally no morale modifiers, you're fighting 6 morale with... You're not gonna last so long, are they? Yeah, I think you'll be fine here. Well, if you enjoyed watching, a like and a sub will be appreciated, but this is all I have time for today. As always, I'll see you next one. Bye.